right before we got on mic, Erin talked about improvising, which, true or false, is something you shouldn't do while baking.
Well, it depends on who you ask. My friends that break my heart will improv. I am a true to the recipe kind of a girl.
I am not a true to the recipe kind of girl.
I am also not a true to the recipe person. That makes baking with other people interesting.
Uh-oh.
Because I was raised with this is about a cup of flour. And you know what? It turns out fine.
I was we'll get into why Erin is very particular about measurements. Yes, I was raised with like putting the flour in the spoon or the cup and like cutting a knife across the top of it. We were very serious about it.
My mom skipped salt. My mom was like, salt, we don't need salt. There shouldn't be salt in any baked goods. And it wasn't until I was like 30 that I was like, wait a tick. Like they wrote it down there for a reason. Like probably there should be salt in recipes. And then I started putting salt in and then she would taste that and be like, this is really good. And I was like, yes, we've been doing it wrong for 30 years.
Yeah, I can say that I definitely think I was raised in a non-salt household as well. And it possibly had to do with Crisco being a major thing versus unsalted butter. And it wasn't until my young adulthood that I fully understood the difference between salted and unsalted butter and why it was important. So the question is, how much salt's already in this recipe? And then sometimes I don't put in more.
My thing has always been, can I add more salt to this? Yes.
So I have a great team at the table here. You're listening to A Little Too Quiet. It's the Ferndale Library podcast, and it's brought to you by the Friends of the Ferndale Library. My name is Jeff, and there's Erin.
Hello.
And there's Everett.
Hello.
And Sarah's here.
Hi.
Hey, Sarah, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me over.
I know you all love baking, and this library is bringing its bake sale back. It was a big thing here post-COVID, or pre-COVID, I apologize, pre-COVID. And folks went crazy for it. We're going to have a giant table with lots of baked goods. The community shows up. They all bring a plate or a bag or cupcakes or cakes or bread or cookies or who knows what. And the proceeds benefit the library. It's a wonderful thing. Anyway, you all love baking. Let's talk about baking.
Yes.
But I'll go first, and we'll kind of go around the table and talk about how we got into baking. How did that come to be? Was it our parents or something else? And for me, I think this is not an extraordinary answer, but the holidays come around and you start baking cookies, and one day you become a grown up who doesn't want to be like the freeloading teenager they once were, who didn't help with anything in the kitchen, and you say, "I'll help you with those cookies," and then you kind of have fun with it. That was my thing. What about you, Everett?
I think that I mostly got into baking as a young adult. I think it was a good gateway to recipe books because cookbooks can be a little intimidating with different ingredients and processes that are like that I have to look words up to understand. Whereas baking is usually you melt things, you stir things, you put them in a pan. And that sort of straightforward approach made it like easy to like get on board for, and it's just kind of creative, meditative process for me. And I found that if I bake a lot of things and you bring them to social gatherings, people are like, "Hey, you're a cool person."
Who doesn't love the person who brings baked goods to the party?
I was going to say, like, when I was envisioning the future table that will be here at the library full of baked goods, my mind goes to a bakery, and is there not a happier place on earth? Is there not a more serotonin surging situation of just frosting and sugar everywhere? It's wonderful.
Teenage Erin almost went into owning a bakery instead of becoming a librarian.
What?
In fact, fun fact.
Buried the lead. That's awesome.
It was almost there.
Wow.
But then we went to librarianship because I started working in libraries. Like, books, and people are pretty cool.
Fun fact, it's not too late.
Yeah, it's never too late to own a bakery.
Because one of my favorite bakeries is in Kalamazoo, Michigan, called Sarkozy Bakery. And it is run by, it was started and run by a married couple who were both psychologists. And in their 50s were like, you know what? Let's quit and make a bakery. And so they've been spending the rest of their life making baked goods.
Goals.
So you never know. It
Goals.
could be another career in the future.
Are you trying to fire me? No.
So Erin, that's kind of you're in then. You you had the baking bug. That sounds gross.
No, like my parents had a garden when I was a little kid, so we would take all the zucchini and make zucchini bread a lot. So that was like my early exposure, and then it was actually not related to baking, Iron Chef that got us into it, because me and my older sister would watch a lot of this, and being very competitive with each other, we're like, well, we should go and have our own Iron Chef competition.
Healthy competition, hopefully.
Healthy competition that you get between siblings. And we're like, well, neither of us really want to put the money into like actual food. So we just started doing baking competitions amongst ourselves, and it just went from there.
Nice. How about you, Sarah?
I baked like a little when I was growing up. We were a Crisco family as well.
Crisco family.
I feel like in the 80s, everyone who wasn't a Crisco family. And then it lay dormant for a while. And then in my mid 30s, I was like, I want to do something that's not cooking, but like involves an oven. So I was like, I'm going to start baking. So and also Great British Bake Off, because why not? And then I was like, I'm going to make things. And then I was like, wait, this is an art. And then I got really into like, this is a bad bake. And I would just like throw things away. And my wife would say things like, why are you throwing all these away? And I was like, because we can't eat them. They're inedible. And then it started to be like a craft. And then I was like, this is neat that I'm like taking it seriously enough to like care that I wouldn't eat these, so like why am I going to give them to you? So then I started to bake a lot, and then it was like the police officers when I worked at Wayne State, they received cookies. Like a random person on like a sick and shut-in list, they received cookies. Suddenly everyone was receiving cookies. I bake a lot of cookies.
Nice.
And I looked into pastry school, but all the classes start at like 4:00 in the morning because the bakery opens at 7. And I was like, I cannot function at 4 a.m. Like I could not do that.
Yeah.
So I had to gently decline my pastry career before it started.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you could start a midnight bakery.
Like the Sendak book. It could be the Midnight Bakery.
Ooh.
Oh, yes.
Ooh,
Yeah,
I like this.
that's
I like
deep.
the spin.
A deep cut reference to picture books.
So good. Love that book.
I could see how baking could be more appealing than cooking, because if I cook something, you probably have to eat it right away. But baking, you can maybe keep it for a day or two, or put some tinfoil on that, or package it up and then give it to those folks at Wayne State the next day, or what have you, right? So there's not that much
Also, I
pressure.
feel like if I showed up here with like a plate of curry, people
Right.
would be like, thank you. Like no one would really understand whereas like,
Here's some lasagna.
If you want to bring me lasagna, I am more than happy to eat it.
yeah, but
Any
you
day.
would be more like, okay, instead of like, here are some cupcakes. You'd be like, I know what to do with this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's less pressure, and I'll just take one,
Yeah.
instead of like, oh, I have to have a whole plate of saucy lasagna.
Right. And it could be a snack versus a meal kind of a thing
Yes.
too. Yeah. Now I have to say though, Jeff, I have to
Yes.
correct you. You're like, yeah, you could just store it.
Right.
Like,
so
no.
So yeah,
No,
I think
you can't.
that was one of the things that I was going to bring up for baking trivia, is that you storing it in the freezer or the fridge or whatever, it isn't exactly a surefire.
So many reasons why it's not. No, there are some things that do store very well, or some things that even get better with time. But there's a lot of things, particularly like bread, is what I'm thinking of. You want to have that sucker when it's like just warm, where it will melt the butter, but not so hot that it won't cut properly. Or like even cookies, like you want those fresh. Things like bread dry out over time, especially when you put them in the fridge. The fridge is just going to speed up that drying out process, and it's terrible.
So basically, what we've covered is beware of any cookies I give you that I have baked,
Yes.
because they are probably 4 days old.
So
Okay.
note to listeners, at the bake sale, watch out if Jeff brings cookies.
Exactly. Yeah, go ahead, Everett.
Oh, I was just going to say that, when it comes to storing or the longevity of baked goods, I have fully embraced the freezer because, like, maybe I make a couple extra logs of, like, chocolate chip cookie dough. And I'm like, well, I don't have plans of, like, taking them somewhere. I'm like, well, I don't want to have, like, 40 chocolate chip cookies in my house for me to resist eating. So I'll make like one log that could make 6 to 12 cookies maybe. And then everything else goes in the freezer. And when I have that, I wish I had chocolate chip cookies moment like we do, I'm like, right on. I will go into the freezer and I will take this freezer dough and turn them into freshly baked cookies. And it is my favorite. And if I don't know if this counts, this might be like adjacent baking, but pizza dough is also phenomenal for the freezer.
Oh, absolutely.
Pretzel dough too. A lot of doughs isn't,
Yeah.
as long as it's not baked yet.
My bread machine makes excellent pizza dough, but it usually makes 2 like 8 slice pizzas, or if you want to do like 4 slice pizzas. And I like fresh pizza, so I'll just take half the dough, put it in the freezer. It lasts, I don't remember. I probably keep it past its date, but it works still, so it must be good.
doing something
That's
right.
part of my baking estimates.
Is that on the paper to discuss? No. Okay.
No,
Just checking.
I generally live life by estimates, so baking estimates is a for sure thing.
I 100% agree. Like if it's a tablespoon of vanilla, I like to fill the cap of the vanilla bottle and just use that. I'm like, you know what? They probably did this for a reason. It's probably going to be great.
Now, I am all for eyeballing things, and we're going to go to Aaron real soon on this subject. But if I also, a side note, if you receive anything from me that I have baked, rest assured it has twice the amount of vanilla that I was told to put
Great
in.
job.
Oh my
Great
gosh.
job.
Yes.
I can see this about you.
Aaron, more on going with the flow and just eyeballing things.
No. Okay. So something everyone needs to know about me is I, for almost everything, love precision, measurements, and clear-cut rules and guidelines and following them so carefully.
Which fits for baking, I thought.
It fits very well for baking, especially like bread, stuff like that. You never wonder, why did this turn out right? It's like, well, it should turn out right every single time if you follow the recipe.
Oh, man.
So, I mean, there are places you can riff. You can have more vanilla. You could maybe swap out those chocolate chips for raisins if you were so inclined.
Why would you do that?
But raisins are delicious.
Raisins are horrid.
They're nature's candy.
All right, we're going to need a part 2 on just raisins. Okay.
Yes, but anyway, I like precision, and that's part of why I like baking. Is compared to like cooking, which is there can be a lot of free form in cooking. Baking is very much a science more than an art, and there's just some things like you can't go and just like mess around with how much baking powder or baking soda that you add into something, or you can't just swap out eggs for applesauce. True stories. I know someone who did that. Guess what? Did not work.
Yes, you can.
Because Everett has done vegan baking.
Not in the recipe they did.
Well,
Oh,
then
boy.
I would point to the recipe as flawed and not the baker.
You know, wow.
Because I often, if I'm making a vegan baking, I find that just plain applesauce is the most reliable as an egg substitute. Because often those recipes, if they're geared towards being vegan already, they take into account the moisture. Like that's a different kind of moisture element. So don't hate on applesauce.
No.
It can work for
It
you.
has its good place as like a oil substitute too, but there's some recipes that specifically call out egg whites, or you need the protein of the egg in there to provide the structure. And these are recipes where you do not want to substitute.
Baking is a hot topic. Now, so you're talking about it should turn out right every time if you follow the recipe.
Yeah.
But let's also talk about the technique of it, because if another side note of an alert, if you receive cookies from me, I'm not. My downfall always is not. I'm coming from basically just a cookie department over here, just so that's where my experience lies.
Sure.
Occasional pie, but mostly cookies. And it's in the beating of the eggs. And it's in the how much did I put 1% too much flour or 1% too little flour? And that's my downfall every time. Did I whisk them just right, Aaron? The recipe can't help me there.
There's usually words though that'll key you in if it's a recipe. Like
Okay.
if it says till frothy,
Okay.
you gotta look for those bubbles.
There you go.
know? And for the flour, get a scale. It's the best.
Oh, cool. I'm just using cups over here. Everett disagrees.
Oh, I don't disagree. I'm shaking my head because the
Different style of baking.
the opposite
Yes.
land that I'm living in right now is great because I love everybody's approach to working in the kitchen. And my partner is a bit more by the book, and I am a bit off book. And over the years, we have sort of met in the middle where we interpret the steps together. The question is, do we melt the butter even though it says not to, or it doesn't say whether or not you should? Well, let's try it this time. Next time, we won't. Because one thing I don't like, and Aaron is going to cringe really quick.
I'm like preparing myself mentally.
The entire podcast, Ever is just holding the hand up.
And this is where my partner differs, where, this is where it's good to delegate tasks, is I do not like to use a mixer.
Oh.
Many recipes. Oh my goodness, Aaron,
So,
it's okay.
folks at home, it's an audio medium. If you've maybe seen the film Home Alone, you'll know that the character screams and puts their hands on their face.
Who doesn't use a mixer?
Aaron over here, Sarah too.
I love the mixer so much.
I think it's a sensory element. I don't like the sound. I don't like the vibration. I've used different mixers. I'm sure if I spend $550+ on a really nice mixer, it could change my life. But I think it would be just something that my partner uses and I look at with mild disdain that it takes up so much space in my kitchen. But I grew up in a house with mixers and things like that, but I just find they like take away from the calm of baking for me.
Oh, that's so interesting.
So I've adjusted a lot of like recipes that are like long term. I use them all the time, and I've worked them where if it can be hard to mix in cold butter without a mixer. Well, I soften it.
Yep.
And I adjust the recipe so that it still turns out just fine. And I can almost guarantee no one would know that I melt my butter most of the time.
See, melted butter is spread. What are you doing, Everett? That's so much spread for cookies.
Yeah, it's a whole different texture in your cookie.
Yeah.
This is why you use the fridge and freezer, because it makes for a chewier cookie, especially if you melt the butter. And so that it still has a rise.
I want to backtrack to something you said earlier about your cookie logs. You log. Could you explain the process of logging your cookies?
Oh, yeah. So I've seen, but at this point I kind of do it by default, where some recipes will say, put your cookies into logs. And this can often come up with like sugar cookies, just because the nature of how people like to cut them and make sure they're kind of the same shape or size or something. But so I can proportion out cookie dough. I will, I don't know, maybe cut the dough in half. And then I get some plastic wrap and I lay it down and I spread out the dough into basically like a 12-inch log. And then I roll it up into the plastic wrap and it becomes just sort of round. And then I either throw it in the fridge if I just want to let it be in there for an hour and then cook it later, like bake it later that day, or I throw it into the freezer and it comes out fine.
So you're not a drop cookie kind of person. It sounds like you're a slicer.
Or at least a refrigerator dough.
I don't actually, this is like I do this with chocolate chip cookie dough and I don't slice chocolate chip cookie dough. I will undo the log and I will it's basically my own version of a break and bake.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Because it's still soft, even from the freezer, it's not hard. So you can break a piece off and shape it into a ball. You can smash it down. But it's easier than having it saved in a tub where you have this, it's like too deep. The dough goes too deep. And then you have to use a spoon. I like to work with my hands. So if I don't have to use a spoon, I won't.
Nature spoons. Your hands are nature spoons.
You wash your hands, you use your hands. There you go.
Honestly, hands are the best way to like do some tasks in
I agree.
baking more than anything. As long as they're clean, it does so much better job than a spoon. for
Also,
some
will you
things.
ever get to the point where you require a cookie log where you're keeping track of the cookie logs?
Oh, I would. How long I did it for,
Exactly.
how many cookies I made with it,
Exactly.
the weight of it, everything.
I totally am on Everett's side when it comes to the aggressiveness that the mixer can bring into the situation. For me, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Baking is a you all know this. Baking is a singular experience, and since I only do it like 2 months out of the year, I am always out of practice when I finally get back into it, and I underestimate how much adrenaline rises up in me when I'm doing it. And then again, just the cookie person here, it's all this buildup and all this measuring, and I'm getting a little bit of tension almost. So I feel like I'm not doing it right because it sounds like it should be meditative.
See, I think it depends on what you're trying to get out of it, because
Okay.
I never have a meditative baking process, but it's also not what I'm trying to get out of the
Gotcha.
process. For me, I like the rhythm of the steps,
Mm-hmm.
Not as a meditative, take your time kind of thing, but just it's fun to work on a process/project kind of a thing with a delicious end result.
Mm-hmm.
So I look for like, how technical of a recipe can I find or make? How can I challenge myself is my thing. So my stress doesn't go up with that.
Mm-hmm.
But it sounds like, because you don't do it very often, you're stuck in the technical aspects while trying to at the same time have a relaxing process out of it.
My family's also really big into the no-bake cookie, which to me sometimes feels like diffusing a bomb when I'm in the midst of it. So I think that's the other problem.
I feel like it's a misnomer, the no bake. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean you don't have to use your stove or oven. Like, you still have to do some sort of component that requires heat. So when I first realized that, I was upset by that, because I was like, you promised me nothing. And it said no, just no bake.
Do we have any favorite baking memories, baking success stories? Some like
I made a
perfect things?
Yule log.
Oh,
I
what
made
a
a Yule
joy.
log. Last Christmas, I made a Yule log.
Wow.
And it made me feel so dang fancy. And I was like, look at me, I'm rolling. Look at me, I'm frosting. And then I also made like a little holly leaf on top. And then I took it to Christmas and I was like, I have done this for you. I have provided this for you. And luckily, my relatives were like, wow. And I was like, that is the reaction.
The show-stopping moment.
Yes, it was my showstopper. I made a
Wonderful.
Yule log. It's the only time I have.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and I might do it again. I don't know. And once I made a peach pie that my wife was like, this is the most fantastic peach pie. And the problem with freestyling with your cooking, baking is that like now I can never replicate. And she's always like, remember that time you made the pie? And I'm like, I do, but I can't like get that back for you. I'm really sorry. I have no idea what happened to produce that, but I'm super glad you liked it. I just like cannot do that for you again.
So sometimes this happens to me in my world of estimates. And so my cookbooks are filled with do this instead notes, where a recipe might say a quarter cup of milk. And I'm like, do a whole cup. Or the opposite could be true. Like, that was way too much milk. And it probably has something to do with something else in my process. But I'm like, oh, yeah, well, now I know for next time. I literally have a handwritten recipe called The Best Waffles. That purely came out of my and my partner's mind one day, and we wrote it down, and it is amazing.
That's
it is
great.
an amalgamation of like 3 recipes that only exists for us.
The mad scientist nature of baking.
Yeah.
Erin, I know you're a fan of deviation from the.
From the norm, from the
the
standards,
lines.
from the lines. Yes, I like to color out
Erin's
some
like,
lines.
instead.
We could all just follow the recipes.
Instead, no. I have to say, I do also occasionally will like do my own riff on a recipe and edit it. But it's usually after becoming very familiar with like the particular kind of recipe and knowing where I can play with it. It's mostly just changing flavors or adding flavor or like little things like that. But I will write it down as its own separate recipe, never borrowing the original in case I want to have the classic version.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it was like
Version 2.0.
version 1.2, version 1.3, version 1.4.
Okay, great.
It's the small steps.
Baby steps for you. That's
Yule log. peach pie,
Yes.
waffles. Do
Yes.
you have a magic moment?
My magic moment.
Your magic dish?
Magic dish.
Pie, cookies,
Are you
bread.
familiar with a pavlova?
Yes.
No.
Okay, so imagine it's basically got a crispy outside, and then the inside is kind of textured like a marshmallow. It's basically baked egg white.
It's a meringue.
It's like a meringue.
Oh, okay.
So you have this beautiful disc kind of like shape, and in the center is like a little divot that you put in your homemade lemon curd, and then you have your homemade cream you put on top, and then you have like fresh berries, like raspberries and blueberries and strawberries. First time I made one of those and didn't have it crack was such a like yes kind of moment, because it was a little bit technical. And I brought that in for someone's birthday, and the awe, the stares, the oohs, it was truly wonderful. And also eating it was delicious.
Yeah.
Let's come into the trivia portion of the event. You all
Dang.
can just shout out your answers.
Okay.
I think we've covered this. True or false, keeping things in the fridge will help keep it from going stale. That's kind of a false thing, right?
I would
But
say
freezer will work sometimes.
Yes.
Yes.
yeah, freezer can be a tool.
Okay.
If you're going to put it in the fridge, you should just eat it quick
Sure.
instead of putting it in the fridge.
Sure.
Why aren't you eating it? That's why you're
The
putting
only
it in the
thing
fridge.
that's
Like, why are you
probably
lying to
good
yourself?
in the fridge, I would say, is like a tiramisu or a pie. I love cold pie.
That's fair.
I like room temperature pie.
That's fine.
What is happening here? Okay.
We can't go back to the same office and
Yeah,
work together.
you two should not
anymore.
live together.
True or false? Room temperature pie is good. True, true or false? True or false? Is this true or false? True or false? There actually never was a Betty Crocker.
True.
That's true.
It's
Yeah,
true.
no,
Yeah, it's
she
made up.
She was an amalgamation of corporate America to be like, look at this housewife that we want to sell you.
Right.
Look how easy it is for her. The box cake mix was like a huge deal when it came out. Like,
Yeah.
it's going to save you house women so much time, and then you'll have even more time to sweep, or I don't know what you're supposed to be doing. Something.
To
But it was
raise
like,
the children single-handedly.
oh, yes, think of the children. So, I'm sorry. What was the question?
Yeah. So there never really was.
Oh, super.
Very true.
The answer is true.
How about this one? This is either really hard or really easy. What was the first thing ever baked in the history of humans?
Ooh, this is fun.
Bread.
It's bread. Bread, of course, is the answer. Of
Yeah,
course, it's
Yeah,
bread.
Flour,
leavened or
water.
unleavened. Yeah, I think you might. I don't know for sure, but I'd imagine it was like a.
Probably
a
like a
tort-
flatbread.
I was
type,
thinking a flatbread or tortilla. Type.
depending on which region.
Yeah.
And the next one is an essay question for me.
Oh my God.
What even is leavening? What does that mean?
Leavening?
Why do I see that word everywhere?
It's a rising agent that's going to help your product, whatever you're making, not be sunken.
Okay.
So
Creates the little air bubbles that create lift usually.
So you can do that in a variety, baking powder, baking soda, and that's why a lot of recipes call for eggs, dozens of eggs, because eggs can be your rising agent because of that lift of the foam and the proteins and all the things that I pretend to know, but I don't. But that can also help your item get some lift.
Sometimes it's even like the reaction between an acid and a base
Wow.
that will create the lift. Like when I've brought in my banana cake a couple times, that uses a baking soda and lemon juice to create the lift in the cake.
That was going to be my next thing is being good at chemistry will or won't help you in baking. And the answer is yes.
It will.
It's pure chemistry.
I answered it with my essay.
That's right. And then just to follow up, one of the best things I ever wound up baking somehow, and it's just because I followed the recipe and I don't know what I did, but it was a pecan pie. And my conflict there is that I actually hate pecan pie,
I do too.
but all of my guests went crazy for it. So it's too, Sarah, it's too sweet. Is it possible? It's too sweet.
It is very sweet.
Good Lord.
It
it's
is
sweet.
very sweet,
It's
but you gotta admire the gusto
Sure.
for which it goes to sweet.
For sure.
It's like, you know what? I'm a pie. I'm gonna be a pie, and then it like went to town on being a pie.
See, I think it would be fine if I had pecan pie and then I had something like a salted whipped cream or something like cut through it.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's just too much straight sugar for me to enjoy it.
Yeah, that's fair.
I don't know if this makes it more or less sweet, and feel free to cut this if it's not podcast worthy.
We'll cut it from the recipe.
Is probably one of the best pecan pies I've had is one that uses Woodford Reserve whiskey in it.
I thought you were just gonna say wood, and I was like, I can't wait to see where this is going. Everett.
No, put a little Woodford Reserve whiskey in it.
Specifically
takes
that
I can
brand.
see-
Yeah,
Okay.
takes it up a notch. I think it's a bit caramely, which I guess might
Sure.
make it seem like it's sweeter, but I think it adds a dimension that isn't just sugar.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need to balance it out with something, I think.
Have you ever
Good.
eaten like sweet butter pie? Like it's something from like St. Louis or something. It's called just like butter pie or sugar
Oh,
pie.
yes,
Or like
yes. I know what you're talking about. Like gooey butter.
gooey butter.
Yeah,
yes,
cake
yes.
or whatever. Yes.
Let's not eat that.
It's not for me.
Okay, I don't think it's for
fine.
me either.
It's fine.
Let's, well, that's a whole other podcast.
Is there time
Yes.
for, I don't know if we're getting to baking fails.
Oh, I was just about to get to bacon fails.
I
I
shall
have a-
hold.
I have a whole tangent on that.
Oh my god. Good. I can't wait.
I have a whole tangent because it involves, because again, I'm not a baking professional here, but like, it's just funny to think about. Pizza was brought up earlier, and we, pizza is referred to as pizza pies sometimes. It is pie-esque. We are sort of baking it, but I think it's because it sometimes involves vegetables and meat, and we're cooking that. So we are cooking the things on top of the pizza, but we are also baking the pizza.
It's a savory bake.
What about potato pie? Is that a thing? Did I just invent that? Is that baked? Won't we usually? Never mind. All right.
I would love to eat potato pie.
Sweet potato pie is definitely
Yeah.
a thing,
that's
and
true.
it's very good.
Excellent.
I think I could envision a pie where you very thinly slice the potato. It had to be the right kind of potato, probably like a waxy one. And then you use that to make the crust. Out of
So
these
you would do
slices.
crustless, but then have the potatoes themselves be the crust?
Exactly. That's what
Oh,
I
there
would
you
do.
go. Okay.
Again, this may be parallel, but there is shepherd's pie.
Oh, also
Pie
true.
is in the name,
That's right.
but
Or
I think
pot pie even.
pot pie.
All this to say that my
Baking.
fail is technically a cooking fail, even though it felt like a baking fail to an extent. It is, and we've all been there, that one instance in which I tried to create soup inside of a pumpkin.
Of course you did. Sure.
As one does.
Yes, totally. Okay.
I can't even remember what I did. Some sort of stewy.
Probably using either a stewing or a pumpkin pie pumpkin.
Yes. And that thing went into the oven and wound up being so heavy that it broke the rack of the oven.
Oh dear.
Then broke open and spilled soup all over the kitchen floor with pumpkin guts. It was
That sounds terrible.
it was very
Yes.
grisly in this sort of way. And boy, we had a laugh.
After you finished 4 hours of deep cleaning.
Again, not a baking fail, but a nice kitchen fail.
Yeah.
I'm sure we've all been there with pumpkin guts on our hands.
Not there specifically, but I guess adjacent.
You know that horrible sound when your pumpkin crashes in your oven.
I went through a period where I believed that any box cake mix could be mixed with a can of Sprite. And then I would try to force my wife to eat it. And she was like, why? Do you hate me? Like, what have I done to you? I was like, no, this is delicious. Like every hack, all those baking hacks where it's like, okay, you're going to here's what you get, Sarah. Here's what you get. Get a can of cherries. Yes. Get a can of Sprite and a box cake mix, and then just put it all together, put it in the oven, and then try and eat it. And
To be fair, some of those dump cakes do work.
yeah, this was not.
No.
I threw away so many disastrous 1 can of cola / a chocolate cake mix. It was bad. It was a dark time.
I also
soda years.
I also have a baking fail that is cake related though, and it's not technically a baking fail. It's only an asterisk. It's that one time I made carrot cake, and I guess I'm just disappointed in myself that I did follow the recipe and put cream cheese all over it, even though it's just totally against my dietary beliefs, and I think that it is an abomination. And I would have otherwise put vanilla frosting. So
You internally struggle.
I compromised my morals.
Never
Everyone-
compromise your morals for me.
Everyone loved it, but I was hating myself.
Yeah.
True or false, carrot cake has carrots in it.
True.
I have had it both
It
ways.
depends. Yeah.
No, this is a trick question.
Oh,
It must have carrots.
No. I have had carrotless carrot cake.
Oh man, I was gonna
it was
say
zucchini bread. I'm on to you, lady.
But they're essentially the same thing.
No, because one has carrots.
And one
it's
has
a
like
cake.
a buttercream frosting.
Right. And one is the bread. That's sad and lonely.
Can you call that a bread? I don't know that you can.
Zucchini bread?
Yeah.
Oh, I call zucchini bread every night.
It's
I'm like, dear zucchini bread, it's me, Sarah. How are
I
you?
miss you.
I miss you. I wish you'd come over.
true or false, carrot cake absolutely needs to have cream cheese
Yeah.
frosting.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
True.
Yes.
Wait, it has to have some kind of frosting.
No, frosting, sure.
Frosting.
Sure.
No.
Carrot, it should
I think
have.
this is the one time in this podcast that Aaron and I have agreed.
Yes. Carrot cake and red velvet must have
True.
a cream cheese frosting because you
Fair.
need that tanginess.
Red velvet needs cream cheese
Yes.
too.
Yes. Only 2 cakes that I will put my foot down for the frosting type, besides probably a German
Chocolate cake.
chocolate cake.
The
But
list is growing,
Yeah.
Aaron.
And now it's 3.
I mean, so
How
we're
many
all
feet do you have that you can put down?
we're all in
You're on-
agreement though that cream cheese is disgusting. So moving on.
Okay.
no, I can tell you about my cake failure though.
Yes, please.
So imagine, if you will,
I'm picturing it.
someone's birthday. They love magical, joyful things. So you make
Cake on a
them.
birthday? Wait a minute.
I know, it's crazy. So 6 layers, each colored differently to be a rainbow.
Go on.
Inside, sprinkles
Yes, yes.
for when
Loving
you open it up. Yes.
So far, so
The
good.
outside frosted and decorated to look like a unicorn.
Amazing.
What is happening?
So here's where it goes terribly wrong.
Okay.
You very carefully transport this all the way to work. You cut into it. The first slice, wow, magical, great. And then slowly but surely, the whole cake just starts to
Tipping. Oh,
and
no.
collapses on top of the table.
Architectural fail.
It was an architectural fail. And it needed
dear.
supports for 6 tiers of
Yeah.
cake. And it did not have those.
I gotta tell you though, I admire your gumption.
It
I
was
like what you were trying to do there.
so beautiful.
I believe
in
it.
those
Sounds
couple
beautiful.
of seconds before I opened
Before it fell.
it.
My
Did someone take
birthday
pictures?
is this
We
year.
did.
Okay. Your birthday this year.
My
yes.
birthday
You
is
want a smaller, maybe a 3-tier.
I mean-
A unicorn rainbow cake. I mean, sprinkle cake.
I love sprinkles. I often ask myself, can this just have sprinkles on it, even if it doesn't say? Because sprinkles are great. Sprinkles is its own thing too, just so you know. The dark, seedy under. I don't know.
It's true. We can have a
That
whole
is
conversation
sprinkles.
about sprinkles.
But I still love sprinkles. I'll stop there. But I have a baking fail.
Sure.
One is short, and I feel many listeners can relate, where you mix up one ingredient for another. There are many white-colored baking ingredients.
So true.
One day, just bacon. It was probably chocolate chip cookies, to be honest. 'Cause that's like the easiest to do from memory kind of thing. And the cookies were an absolute fail. And I was like, but why? I don't understand. Because instead of baking soda, I put in confectioner sugar.
That's kind of awesome on some level.
Wow.
But it was not good.
Doesn't leaven.
Yeah, I love
So that is brief. The other one involves a cat. So this would, again, it's not exactly that the baking went wrong, but the storage of baking went wrong. Which is many years ago with a cat that is no longer with us, who loved bread. And I knew this about him, so I baked. This was some of the best muffins I've ever baked. This is why it feels like a fail. Is it it was such a high and then such a low, which was a batch of blueberry muffins that is a recipe I feel like I've never recaptured. I'm always trying to find best blueberry recipe. If you have the best one, I work at Ferndale Area District Library. Please drop it off. And a lemon poppy seed recipe with a light lemon icing on top. These are the most amazing muffins I've ever made. I store them. And to any of the cat owners out there, this will seem normal. I then put them up on top of the fridge, out of the reach of my cats, in sealed tubs. It's a very important part of the story.
So far, so good.
I wake up the next morning. Said sealed tubs are on the ground, unsealed, and all of the muffin tops on the lemon popsy seed muffins are gone.
Whoa.
Someone
And
wanted to hit a opium.
Before anybody in the listeners is like, oh no, was your cat okay? Yes, my cat was perfectly fine. He had an iron stomach and lived many years more. He just loved butter and he loved bread. I now have another bread, butter loving cat who will steal donuts, but again, he is fine. But cats, they're just unpredictable.
Truth.
They're predictably unpredictable, and even so, you cannot always thwart. They're just so motivated.
It's true.
Gotta watch him. Amelia, my cat, always tries to hop into the oven because she is a cave cat and she thinks, wow, look at that nice, warm, lit oven / future home for me. I go, no.
This is not a baking fail, but it is a chemistry fail because the confectioner sugar reminded me. When I was very young, I was a big fan of, I might be vegan now, but when I was very young, I was a big fan of chocolate milk. And, Nestle Quick had this little powder that you could take and spoon into a glass of milk and stir it up, and you'd have chocolate milk. Well, one day, parents weren't home. Older siblings were home. I wasn't like unsupervised, but I was certainly in the kitchen by myself. And I said, I'm going to make myself a glass of chocolate milk. And I'm going to reach for what my 7-year-old self thinks is Nestle Quick. And it's baking cocoa.
Oh, no.
And I go through the procedure and I take a sip. And I am flummoxed for 2 reasons. Obviously, it tastes horrible. And then immediately I think, wait a minute. The thing that I reached for says cocoa. Cocoa Puffs are delicious. Cocoa Krispies are delicious. Why is this
Not
a
delicious.
powder of cocoa? Sounds like it would be delicious.
Yeah.
That's
Is it cocoa powder the same as those packets of hot cocoa mix?
Exactly.
One would think.
Exactly. So I spent a good deal, not so much feeling bad that I didn't get my glass, but like trying to figure out, why does this not taste good by itself?
Same thing with vanilla, isn't it? Everyone thinks, oh, it smells so good, and you taste it as a kid, and you're so crushed
tastes
and
terrible.
disappointed.
You know what I found? I'm going to tell you.
Please.
I thought that I loved milk chocolate chips. Semi-sweet is the way to go.
It is.
It took me a while, like into my 40s, to be like, wait a tick.
No one is talking about this in the baking world.
We
We got to bring this up.
Milk chocolate chips are the biggest scam. They do not add a chocolate flavor unless you've layered it with something else. And like what you buy them for is to eat them by the handful at night before you go to sleep.
Absolutely.
I did not realize that. And then I started using Ghirardelli semi-sweets and I was like, I have not been living life. But now I am.
Yeah.
So thank you
I'm
for
so happy
coming.
for you.
Thank you so much.
I think I have fallen pretty deep into the dark chocolate chip camp. I
okay.
was semi-sweet all the way. I don't know if it's just like blinders, but I didn't know there were milk chocolate chips. That sounds like an abomination. So I'm glad I missed that.
Yeah, I'm baby stepping over, I think, to dark chocolate.
But it's like, there's so many different types, and you can get the little mini chocolate chips. So then you just get tiny bites of dark chocolate.
How dark is your dark? Like 60, 80? Tell me more.
I think 60.
Yeah, that sounds fair.
I'm at 84. I love it really dark and kind of almost to the point of bitter.
This doesn't surprise me about you, actually. Just truly does not.
No, I'm
Yeah.
full on dark chocolate.
I
I
believe
think
that.
it adds some good balance to a dish, but even just to eat it, because then you can eat more chocolate.
Well, you can always eat as much chocolate as you want.
There's only so much sweet chocolate. Like milk chocolate, I can only eat so much.
No, as much as you want, personally, as a human. And then you don't have to eat it anymore. It's the beauty of having.
You can have
Individualism.
milk chocolate. I'll just eat all the dark chocolate.
Okay, fair. Handshake.
Here's a quiz. This is not as
Oh
easy
my
as
God.
true or false.
Another quiz.
So I have some cookies that come out of the oven, and they are super thin and sticky.
Mm-hmm.
Did I screw up the egg part or the flour part?
The butter part.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Yes, it's
The butter part.
yeah,
Darn.
that's probably the butter part.
Shoot.
Are you melting your butter?
No.
Without refrigerating or freezing first.
It's probably where that's my downfall. Yeah.
So I would like to tell you something. You say that you only do cookies, and you've already mentioned like 16 other desserts. You're like, oh, there's the time I made the carrot cake, and the time I made the pecan pie, and the time I made, and I'm like, you're making
Yes.
all these things that you are not giving yourself credit for, Jeff. So
Well, thank you. In my baking history, it has been 80% cookies and then 20%. I'll try that once.
yeah. 20% is still 20%.
Sure.
So
Let's say that you had to bake something. Let's say that I signed you all up for the bake sale.
I am signed up for the bake sale.
If you had to make a split second last minute decision of like, oh, someone needs me to bake something, I'm going to bake this go-to thing, Everett.
Butter brick bars.
What?
I haven't made them in years, but they are so bad for you. But everybody,
They sound so good.
I mean,
I'm
butter
sorry,
is
where's
the
the concern?
first word.
Yeah, I
Just think that needs to be known.
But brick is
So-
also involved. So a butter
Yeah.
brick.
It's
yes.
a brick
Yes.
of butter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Tell me.
So it's saltine crackers. So you take a baking sheet and I would recommend lining it with tinfoil unless you have some amazing nonstick thing. And then you put saltines. You put, I'm going to guess 2 sticks of melted butter all over the saltines. And then you take chocolate chips, dark chocolate, do it. It's the best. And because the butter is so hot, it melts the chocolate all over it. And then you, I did forget. There is a slight oven step, I think, with the butter and the saltines because you want to make it super hot. Just a few minutes, and then it comes out. You do the chocolate. You put your choice of nut. You know, I've done pecans. I've done walnuts. It's kind of your choice. You can do a mixture on top, which then gets into the chocolate. Then you fridge it, and it becomes a solid brick of goodness. And because saltines, you know, they're little squares, you literally just break them off. Sometimes they're squares, sometimes they're parallelograms, but they are all manner of good shape that everybody loves. Even after you tell them how much butter is in it,
We do this with matzah during Passover.
Oh, cool.
So we could have something that doesn't taste terrible, and it's just instead of saltines, it's matzah, and then butter, and then chocolate chips, and then nuts.
Butter
It's barely
brick.
baking. That's what's kind of
Yes.
great about it, and it's pretty affordable. If you're already a baker, you probably already have butter, nuts, and chocolate. And there was a time in my life, for some reason, I always seemed to have saltines around. So it was just like easy. You basically use like a whole tube. You know, saltine crackers come with 2 to 4 tubes. inside. Sleeve.
Yeah.
And yeah, you use at least one of them, and it's super easy.
Butter bricks,
Butter brick bars.
butter brick bars. In my head, I was just picturing a stick of margarine, which is itself
It is a lot of
just
butter.
hand.
Yeah.
I
like
mean, I could just eat some straight up butter. That would be fine.
Split second decision.
Okay.
Baking.
I'm going to bring a little unconventional, my salted rosemary bread.
Ooh.
It's
Good day.
crusty on the outside, rosemary in the middle, rosemary at the top, and then we have some delicious crunchy flaky salt
That's fantastic.
sprinkled on.
Sounds like it'd be good with some like finishing olive oil.
Yes, I like to dip mine in olive oil, or it's great for like to have with soup.
Oh yeah.
You just scoop up the leftover broth. Oh, so good.
That sounds good.
Yeah, it's really easy to make too. It's your standard, bread recipe essentially, but then you throw in some herbs and some extra salt because salt is delicious.
More salt, the better.
Sarah, split second decision.
Chewy gingers.
Oh, cookies?
Oh my God, chewy gingers
Yes.
cookies. They are so good. I had a friend send them to me 2 years ago in the mail for Christmas. And I called her and I was like, what is this? So she sent me the recipe. And like, I'm not a molasses or ginger person at all. And these cookies are so good.
Mm-hmm.
They're the kind where it's like the edges are a little crispy and then the inside's like, ew, and it's like yummy in your mouth. And it feels like you like went into a sauna with a bear because it's like all these warm spices and it just feels really nice inside your tummy.
That sounds delicious.
Yeah, I'm taking improv classes at wherever I am at Go Comedy, and every week I bring cookies for the children who are like 40-year-old functioning adults, and then every week I bring them, and then I ask them like, what did you think of this? Like it's always cookies, and I'm always like, what do you think? And the chewy gingers are the only ones where they ate all of them, and then we're like, can you make those again? The other ones they were like, these are nice, thank you for bringing
So
them.
I should sign up for Go Comedy so I can have lots of cookies.
and then
every
have
week.
me in your class. Yes, but it's my chewy gingers.
Butterbrick bars had the same reaction. I made it for like a party just as a, I don't have a lot of money. It's really easy. I have all the ingredients. And then everything I went to, people were like, are you bringing Butterbrick bars?
Yeah.
And I was like, no, but yes.
Then it becomes part of your identity.
Yeah.
Everett the Butterbrick bar.
So there's
Good. I don't know.
I myself am not a Butterbrick bar, but I come with the Butterbrick bars. The Butterbrick bars come with me.
Okay, we can workshop that.
The butter brick bar bringer.
Everett.
That's a little mouthful.
I think
but-
the
bringer.
harbinger of Butterbrick bars.
I mean, yes.
Huh. Okay, so there's a cookie that I never get wrong, and it doesn't have a fancy name like Snickerdoodle or some sort of catchy thing, because every recipe I look at, it literally just describes what's in it. But if I were making a split second decision and I wasn't going to screw it up, because I certainly screw up a lot of other cookies, it is a white chocolate oatmeal cranberry cookie.
Oh,
Apparently that's what it's known as. We don't have a snappy name for it yet.
Hot newsflash. Fruit in cookies.
belongs there. It is delicious.
Hi, that was my hot newsflash. And for me, the hot newsflash
There's breaking news.
is that
Wait a minute, interrupting news here.
fruit in cookies is just not right.
Oh boy. Well,
I'm not a raisin cookie. I'm not a,
that'll be our wrap up here. Hot takes before we have to go.
hot takes.
Cookies don't need fruit,
Cookies don't need fruit.
and I'm gonna say cake does not need cream cheese. Any hot takes, Aaron?
Absolutely, you need fruit and jam.
Hold on, we're not disputing each other's hot
Come on,
takes.
take a step
Have a
back.
new hot take.
Fine. Hot take is that carrot cake should have, in fact.
Again, you're doing it again. Have your own thoughts.
Aaron, we're deviating.
I can't. No,
You can't deviate for anything.
I love dark chocolate.
Great.
That's my closer.
Great.
It's good.
White chocolate is a devious misnomer.
Oh, that's another trivia thing, right?
Hater on the white chocolate.
Wow.
Not
There's
really
no
chocolate,
there's no
though.
chocolate. It's just fats.
It's yeah.
Yeah.
It's a vat of Crisco.
We hope that if you listen to this episode and you're not so good at baking like me, that you are now inspired in some way, having heard all of our anecdotes. And if you're like a baking wizard, like the other three at the table who aren't me, you should sign up for the Ferndale Library Bake Sale. You can go to fadl.org/bake-sale. And of course, we'll have that link in our show notes. Thank you, everyone, for being here.
Oh my God, thanks for having me over.
Thanks.
What a good time.
A lot of fun.
Baking's a hot topic.
It's so good.
My goodness. So, we thank you for listening. We thank John Duffy for giving us music for this podcast, and we thank the Friends of the Ferndale Library. Please remember to rate, review, subscribe, and leave us a review because it would help us find more listeners. We'll be back next week with more. Thanks for listening.